Myra Solis never forgot the smell of Agassa 9's dawn. That thin, metallic air drifting off ancient stone towers. That faint warmth rising from violet moss plains stretching endlessly toward broken horizons. And the low, chattering hum of wind turbines slicing through early morning mist like mechanical prayers to a forgotten god. She always paused before entering the habitat dome. Because out here, only out here, she felt alive. The rest of humanity had learned to adapt to shattered worlds, fractured moons, and poisoned atmospheres. They built domes. They filtered air. They genetically modified their lungs. They did whatever survival demanded. But Myra Solis still carried Earth's oceans inside her memories. Blue waves crashing against rocky shores. Salt spray kissing her face. The endless rhythm of tides that once sang lullabies to an entire species. These weren't just memories anymore. They were wounds that refused to close, scars etched so deep into her soul that sometimes she woke up gasping, dreaming she was drowning in waters that no longer existed. Earth was gone now. Not destroyed, just empty. Evacuated. Left behind like an old house nobody wanted anymore. And humanity had scattered across the stars like seeds thrown into cosmic wind, hoping some would take root, knowing most would wither. Agassa 9 was one of those roots. A small colony, 3,000 humans, scientists, farmers, engineers, and children, always children, because humanity refused to stop hoping, refused to stop bringing new life into a universe that seemed determined to extinguish the old. Myra had been stationed here for 18 months. Long enough to learn every ridge, every valley, every shimmer of violet moss that painted this alien world in colors Earth never knew. Long enough to call it home. Her handheld scanner beeped suddenly, cutting through morning silence. Life form approaching, it announced in cold, mechanical tones. Human. Small. Myra frowned. Small. She stepped over a ridge of pale rock, boots crunching against crystalline gravel, and that's when she saw him. A boy. No older than 10 years old. Trembling. Clutching a cracked tablet pressed against his chest like it was the last thing keeping him alive. His dusty hair stuck to a tear-streaked face. His clothes were torn. His knees bled from running, falling, running again. And his eyes, those wide, terrified eyes, held the kind of fear that no child should ever know. "Hey," Myra called gently, approaching slowly, palms open, voice soft. "You okay?" He shook his head violently. "Not okay. Definitely not okay." Then he pointed toward the western horizon, and Myra's stomach tightened into a cold, hard knot. 3 dark silhouettes hovered above the ridge. Krillian hunters. Tall. Insectoid. Narrow limbs ending in razor-sharp claws. Shimmering armor that bent light around them, making them almost invisible against the pale sky. They moved with that predatory grace unique to species that had evolved for one purpose: hunting. The worst kind. Myra had heard stories about Krillian hunters. Everyone in the outer colonies had. They didn't just kill, they made examples. They believed weakness was a disease that needed purging, that mercy was corruption, that the strong had divine right to eliminate anything fragile. And they hated humans most of all. Because humans were weak. Because humans were soft. Because humans protected their children instead of abandoning them. They said humans were weak, the boy whispered, voice cracking. They said making an example of me would. His voice broke completely. He couldn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Myra stepped between him and the hunters. Not today. The Krillian at the front clicked its mandibles, producing a harsh, rattling sound that served as their language, ugly, violent, designed to intimidate. Move aside, mammal, it commanded. The weak must be culled. Myra felt a familiar burn ignite in her chest. Not fear. She'd moved past fear years ago, somewhere between losing her family and watching her planet die. This was fury. Pure, molten, righteous fury. He's a child. He is human, the hunter corrected. That is enough. They lunged. All 3 at once. Myra grabbed the boy, grabbed Nico, though she didn't know his name yet, and sprinted toward the slope. The world blurred around her as boots pounded soft moss. Wind screamed past her ears. Her lungs burned with that thin, metallic Agassa 9 air. She wasn't strong enough, to fight 3 armored hunters. Not he. Not alone. She knew this with the cold certainty of someone who had survived by knowing her limits. But running wasn't surrender. Running was strategy. Running was keeping a child alive long enough for something, anything, to change. She slid behind a rock spire, pressing Nico against the cool stone, heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. "What's your name?" she whispered. "Nico." "Well, Nico. I'm Myra. And I promise you, you're getting home." The hunter's footsteps clicked against stone. Getting closer. Closer. Myra's wrist-com pinged suddenly. Unknown incoming transmission. The signal code made her breath catch. No, it couldn't be. Then a familiar voice, low, calm, steady as gravity itself, echoed through her comm. "Myra. I'm here." Above them, clouds shredded apart. A ship broke through the cloud layer, its hull glowing blue from atmosphere friction. Sleek, angular, deadly in its elegance, and bearing a crest that made Myra's heart surge with hope she'd almost forgotten existed. The crest of the Earth Vanguard. Nico stared upward, mouth open, tears still wet on his cheeks. Who is that?" Myra slowly smiled. Someone the galaxy hoped never to meet again. The Krillians saw the ship and froze. Even they knew the legend. Because Earth had sent him. The one-man entire fleets whispered about. The Butcher of Sawn Theta. The Last Guardian. Kian Hale. Kian Hale stepped out of the drop pod before it had fully cooled. His boots sank into soft violet moss. The air smelled faintly of iron and ozone, a scent he knew too well from 1,000 battlefields scattered across 100 worlds. His presence seemed to fold the space around him, quieting the wind, dimming the noise of the world, pulling all attention toward him like gravity pulling matter toward a black hole. He wasn't built like a hero. No towering muscles. No gleaming armor. No cape flowing dramatically behind him. Just lean. Scarred. Quiet. But there was something in his eyes. That calm certainty of a man who had seen empires fall and refused to let children be the cost. Myra stood with Nico behind her, shoulders straightening instinctively. "You got here fast." "You called," Kian replied simply. No fanfare. No dramatics. No speeches about duty or honor. That was Kian. He had learned long ago that words meant nothing without action, that promises were worthless unless you bled for them, that the universe didn't care about intentions, only results. The Krillians approached in a slow arc, clicking their weapons online. Obsidian spear rifles pulsed with ultraviolet charge, humming with enough power to vaporize organic matter instantly. "You," their leader hissed, recognition dripping with venom. "Human war relic. The Butcher of Sawn Theta." Kian's jaw tightened. Just a fraction. Just enough for Myra to notice. "That name was propaganda," he said quietly. "I don't like it." "You slaughtered an armada." "I defended a colony." His voice stayed calm. Big difference. The Krillians angled their weapons at Nico. Kian stepped forward, placing himself between them and everyone else. "You hurt a child," he said softly, voice carrying across the morning air like a verdict, "and expect the galaxy to fear you." The leader screeched and launched an attack. Kian moved. Not with the brutish violence the galaxy expected from the Butcher of Sawn Theta. Not with savage rage or bloodthirsty hunger. He moved like gravity obeyed him alone, sidestepping attacks that should have been impossible to dodge, redirecting force with minimal effort, disarming weapons with precise strikes that targeted joints, pressure points, structural weaknesses. Within seconds, the 3 hunters lay immobilized on violet moss, their weapons scattered around them like broken toys. Kian didn't strike them again. He didn't need to. He looked at their leader, still conscious, still hissing with impotent rage. "Leave. Now. And tell your warlord, Earth doesn't tolerate cruelty against our young. Not ever." The leader's wings fluttered with fury. "Our warlord will erase you." Kian stared back. Those calm eyes. That quiet certainty. He can try. The hunters retreated, disappearing over the ridge, leaving behind only the memory of violence interrupted. But Myra's face darkened. "They'll call reinforcements." "I know," Kian replied. Nico tugged at his sleeve, small fingers gripping fabric worn soft by years of service. "Why do they hate us?" Kian knelt to his level, meeting the boy's eyes with the same seriousness he'd give any fellow soldier. Because they think we're small, weak, alone. He placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. But we're none of those things. A distant rumble answered him. Both Myra and Kian looked up. Through breaking clouds, 3 Krillian destroyers were descending. Warships, each one capable of leveling cities. And they were heading straight for our Gasanine. Myra stiffened. Kian, that's a war fleet. He pressed a finger to his comm. Vanguard Command. Code ARC-7. Authorization Hail Prime. 3 seconds of silence. Then the sky darkened. Earth's response had arrived. Clouds shredded apart as a single massive carrier emerged above Agasa-9. ECS Horizon Breaker. Framed by lightning and swirling mist, its thrusters glowed like captured stars. Its hull stretched across the sky, blocking out the sun, casting shadows over mountains. Gun turrets the size of buildings rotated slowly, acquiring targets with cold mechanical precision. Nico's breath caught. That's bigger than their whole fleet. Myra nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes despite everything. That's because Earth doesn't send warnings, Nico. She paused. It sends promises. The Krillian destroyers began broadcasting across open channels, voices crackling with desperate authority. Stand down, humans. Surrender the child. Kian answered immediately. One word. No. The Krillians fired first. 3 beams launched toward the horizon breaker, bright, thin lines of concentrated energy that cut across the sky like angry gods hurling lightning. The carrier's shields absorbed them, without flinching. Blue energy rippled across its surface, dissipating the attack like water absorbing thrown pebbles. Then Oath replied. Not with destruction. Not with revenge. With precision. Small drones streaked downward from the carrier's bays, weaving between Krillian ships with impossible agility. They didn't fire weapons. They didn't explode. They simply attached themselves to engines and weapon systems, sending precise electromagnetic pulses that disabled technology without destroying vessels. One by one, the Krillian destroyers went dark. Engines failed. Weapons powered down. Navigation systems crashed. Communication arrays fell silent. The Krillian crews panicked, screaming across failing channels. Human demons. Kian spoke calmly through the open broadcast, his voice reaching every ship, every crew member, every terrified soldier floating helplessly in disabled vessels. We don't harm those who surrender. But understand this clearly, children are not targets. He paused. Humanity may endure insult. We may tolerate disrespect. We may even forgive violence against ourselves. His voice hardened. But we do not endure cruelty against our young. Silence fell across the battlefield. Then a new signal emerged, a holographic broadcast projecting from the largest destroyer. The Krillian warlord appeared. Towering. Massive. Plated in crimson armor etched with war sigils that marked 1,000 victories across 100 conquered worlds. His mandibles clicked with fury, compound eyes burning with hatred. You disgrace your species, human, he snarled. You protect your weak. Kian stepped forward, close to the comm, close enough that his image would fill every Krillian screen. That's exactly why we win. The warlord roared, and activated something ancient, something massive, something glowing with a furious purple core, a weapon Myra had only read about in classified reports. A planet killer. A device capable of destabilizing planetary cores, triggering extinction-level events. Kian, Myra whispered, horror flooding her voice. That could level the colony. Kian didn't blink. Then I'll end it first. He launched upward. Thrust-weighted velocity propelled him toward the warlord's flagship, breaking atmosphere with a sonic boom that shattered windows across the colony. Drones formed protective shields around him, cutting through defensive lines, neutralizing automated turrets. Inside the flagship, alarms wailed. Krillian soldiers scrambled. And the warlord turned in shock as a single human landed on his command deck. Unarmed. Alone. You, the warlord breathed. Kian stood straight. Me. The fight that followed would become legend. Not because of its brutality, though the warlord fought with the savage desperation of a creature facing extinction. Not because of its spectacle, though sparks flew and metal screamed and the flagship shuddered with every impact, but because of what it represented. One man. One quiet, tired, scarred human, refusing to let cruelty take root. The warlord attacked with claws that could shred starship hulls. Kian dodged. The warlord fired weapons designed to pierce military-grade armor. Kian redirected them. The warlord summoned guards, warriors, champions of 1,000 battles. Kian put them down with controlled force, never killing, always incapacitating. Each action shaped by purpose. Not rage. Purpose. Because Kian Hale had learned something the warlord never understood. Violence without purpose was just noise. Fighting without restraint was just chaos. True strength lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice of what to protect. At the final moment, the warlord lunged for the weapon core, that glowing purple heart that could murder a world. Kian knocked it away, pinned the warlord, and spoke quietly, without hatred, without triumph. It ends here. The warlord fell. The Krillian fleet transmitted unconditional surrender moments later. Earth did not celebrate. It simply protected its own. Chapter 6, Dawn of a New Era. The colony gathered at dawn. Quiet. Reverent. Not triumphant. Myra sat beside Nico on the ridge overlooking the valley as Krillian ships were escorted away under ceasefire protocols. The air smelled of rain and warm moss. Peace, fragile, but real, settled slowly over Argasa 9 like morning mist. Nico leaned against her. Are they going to attack again? No, Kian said, stepping up behind them. Not after today. He looked tired. Not from the battle. Myra knew he'd fought worse with less rest. But from the weight of responsibility he carried. The weight of being the one the galaxy feared. The weight of knowing that as long as he lived, enemies would keep coming, testing, probing, hoping to find the weakness that would finally bring him down. Myra nudged him gently. You did the impossible again. Kian shrugged. Just did what any of us would. But Myra knew better. He didn't fight because he was stronger. He fought because he chose to be. Nico glanced up shyly. Thank you for saving me. Kian knelt, meeting his eyes with the seriousness the boy deserved. Promise me something. Oh, okay. Grow up kinder than the ones who hurt you. That's how humans stay human. Nico nodded solemnly. A promise made. A future shaped. The horizon breaker cast a long shadow as it prepared for departure. Kian looked at Myra, uncertainty flickering across features usually carved from stone. You staying with the colony? I think so. They need stability. She paused. You. He exhaled softly. The galaxy's big. There will always be someone who thinks hurting the small proves they are strong. And Earth will send you. He managed a faint smile, the first she'd ever seen from him. Only if I'm needed. As the shuttle ascended, Myra watched it vanish into lavender clouds. She felt something shift inside her. Not grief. Not loss. Something gentler. Hope. Because the universe had finally learned. Humanity's strength wasn't in ships or weapons. It was in the way they protected their vulnerable. In the way they refused to let cruelty define them. In the way a single human, a quiet man with tired eyes, could stand against a fleet and say no. The fight that followed would become legend. Not because of its brutality, though the warlord fought with the savage desperation of a creature facing extinction. Not because of its spectacle, though sparks flew and metal screamed and the flagship shuddered with every impact. But because of what it represented. One man. One quiet, tired, scarred human. Refusing to let cruelty take root. The warlord attacked with claws that could shred starship hulls. Kian dodged. The warlord fired weapons designed to pierce military-grade armor. Kian redirected them. The warlord summoned guards, warriors, champions of 1,000 battles. Kian put them down with controlled force, never killing, always incapacitating. Each action shaped by purpose. Not rage. Purpose. Because Kian Hale had learned something the warlord never understood. Violence without purpose was just noise. Fighting without restraint was just chaos. True strength lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice of what to protect. At the final moment, the warlord lunged for the weapon core, That glowing purple heart that could murder a world. Kian knocked it away, pinned the warlord, and spoke quietly, without hatred, without triumph. It ends here. The warlord fell. The Krillian fleet transmitted unconditional surrender moments later. Earth did not celebrate. It simply protected its own. Chapter 6, Dawn of a New Era. The colony gathered at dawn. Quiet. Reverent. Not triumphant. Myra sat beside Nico on the ridge overlooking the valley as Krillian ships were escorted away under ceasefire protocols. The air smelled of rain and warm moss. Peace, fragile, but real, settled slowly over Argasa 9 like morning mist. Nico leaned against her. Are they going to attack again? No, Kian said, stepping up behind them. Not after today. He looked tired. Not from the battle. Myra knew he'd fought worse with less rest. But from the weight of responsibility he carried. The weight of being the one the galaxy feared. The weight of knowing that as long as he lived, enemies would keep coming, testing, probing, hoping to find the weakness that would finally bring him down. Myra nudged him gently. You did the impossible again. Kian shrugged. Just did what any of us would. But Myra knew better. He didn't fight because he was stronger. He fought because he chose to be. Nico glanced up shyly. Thank you for saving me. Kian knelt, meeting his eyes with the seriousness the boy deserved. Promise me something. Oh, okay. Grow up kinder than the ones who hurt you. That's how humans stay human. Nico nodded solemnly. A promise made. A future shaped. The horizon breaker cast a long shadow as it prepared for departure. Kian looked at Myra, uncertainty flickering across features usually carved from stone. You staying with the colony? I think so. They need stability. She paused. You. He exhaled softly. The galaxy's big. There will always be someone who thinks hurting the small proves they are strong. And Earth will send you. He managed a faint smile, the first she'd ever seen from him. Only if I'm needed. As the shuttle ascended, Myra watched it vanish into lavender clouds. She felt something shift inside her. Not grief. Not loss. Something gentler. Hope. Because the universe had finally learned. Humanity's strength wasn't in ships or weapons. It was in the way they protected their vulnerable. In the way they refused to let cruelty define them. In the way a single human, a quiet man with tired eyes, could stand against a fleet and say no. The lavender clouds of Argasa 9 had barely swallowed Kian's departing shuttle when the colony's alarms rang out again. Not the shrill, panicked tone of danger. A slower, deeper hum. An incoming long-range transmission. Myra stiffened instantly. Another fleet. But this signal wasn't Krillian. It wasn't hostile. It was ancient, older than any empire recorded in the Vanguard's database. Older than humanity's first steps among stars. Older, perhaps, than Earth itself. Nico tugged Myra's sleeve. Is it someone bad? Myra knelt to him, keeping her voice steady despite racing thoughts. I don't know yet, but whatever it is, we face it together. She tapped the console. A holographic circle expanded upward, lines of shifting symbols spiraling like glowing threads. The colony's AI struggled to translate them, symbols flickering, reshaping, forming new patterns that defied known linguistic structures. Then, the message resolved. A voice. Not human. Not Krillian. Something vast. Calm. Observing. Human colony of Argasa 9. We have watched. Myra and the colonists exchanged confused looks. Even the elders, those who remembered Earth, who had witnessed humanity's exodus across stars, had no idea who or what this was. The voice continued. You protect your smallest. You stand for those who cannot stand. This is unusual and admirable. Nico whispered, barely audible. Is it talking about me? Myra placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Maybe it is. The hologram shimmered, shifting into the shape of a constellation, stars rearranging themselves into an enormous, abstract figure spanning half the sky. Beautiful. Terrifying. Ancient beyond comprehension. We are the Vea Consortium. For centuries, we observed the rise and fall of species. Most grow strong by crushing the weak. Most believe fear builds order. The constellation pulsed gently. But you humans, you are different. The colonists gathered silently now, standing in a wide circle around the hologram. Some held breath. Some held each other. Nico clung to Myra, eyes reflecting starlight. You protect your smallest children with the fury of stars. You send your greatest warriors when even one young life is threatened. The galaxy fears you for this. A pause. But we do not. Myra felt something shift in the crowd, a mix of pride, unease, and awe swirling together like currents in an invisible ocean. The voice softened, turning almost curious. The one called Kian Hale. He embodies a truth we rarely see. Not dominance. Not hunger. Another pause. But choice. Nico smiled shyly. I knew he was special. Myra swallowed against tightness in her throat. Why tell us this now? The constellation contracted, forming the shape of a doorway, a vast, white arch of stars that seemed to lead somewhere beyond the physical universe. Because what you did today changed the path of civilizations. Macy is more powerful than destruction. Protection is stronger than conquest. The arch widened. So we come with an invitation. The colonists exchanged uncertain glances. Myra spoke for all of them. Invitation to what? To join the Accord of Sentience. An alliance older than any empire you know. A council not of war, but wisdom. A place where your voice matters. Where your compassion may guide others. Wind stirred the lavender moss. Myra felt an ache of disbelief. Humans, invited to something ancient, peaceful, respected. It felt impossible. Humanity had always been seen as the newcomers, the upstarts, the species that survived through stubbornness rather than wisdom. And now, this. But why us? She asked quietly. The Vea answered instantly. Because your people sent a guardian to protect a child. And your guardian faced a fleet without hate. Without hunger for glory. He fought because he chose to defend one small life. The constellation dimmed, settling into a soft glow. That choice changed you from a young species into a great one. Nico stepped forward, trembling. If they liked Kian so much, does he know? The hologram shimmered. Yes. We spoke to him. He accepted the message calmly. Myra laughed under her breath. Of course he did. The Vea continued. Before dawn tomorrow, we will send envoys. Not to lecture. Not to rule. To learn. A beat. To learn how a species so young holds such fierce love for its smallest. The hologram began to fade. Myra called out. Wait. The stars froze. She took a deep breath. What if the galaxy doesn't like this alliance? The Krillians, the Carthex, the Rion Elders, they'll fear us joining something powerful. They already fear you, the Vea replied gently. But fear built on misunderstanding becomes danger. Fear built on respect becomes peace. The hologram dimmed further. And you, Myra Solis. She froze. Me. You carry oceans in your memory. You do not fight because you must, but because hearts like yours refuse to abandon hope. Another pulse. You will be one of the first to speak for humanity. The hologram flickered once, twice, then dissolved into stardust. Silence fell over the colony. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Nico whispered, Myra, you're gonna talk for Earth. Myra laughed softly, shaking her head in disbelief. I guess so. She looked toward the sky, toward the horizon breaker's fading trail. Kian, she murmured, you really did change everything. The calm that had settled over Argasa 9 was fragile, almost illusory. Myra had hoped that the victory against the Krillians would mark the end of immediate danger, but the universe had a way of reminding her that peace was a temporary illusion. The violet moss glistened under soft morning light, but beneath the surface, the colony sensors recorded a faint, irregular energy spike in the northern ridge, one too precise to be natural. Nico was the first to notice it. Myra, look. He pointed to the horizon, where a strange shimmer hovered above the mountains. It wasn't the familiar glow of departing ships. This was colder, darker, almost invisible to naked eye. Myra stepped forward, instincts sharpening. Senses confirm. Energy signature, unknown origin. And it's growing. She turned to the colony command center, where Kian Hale had remained longer than expected, monitoring communications with Earth. Kian, there's an anomaly north of the ridge. It's not natural. Kian's gaze flicked to her, eyes narrowed. Could be residual Krillian tech. Could be something new. Either way, assume hostile until proven otherwise. The first wave arrived before nightfall. Not massive ships, but smaller, faster vessels, almost like living shadows gliding over the ridge in synchronized, predatory dance. Their hulls were black as obsidian, absorbing light, almost invisible until moonlight caught their edges. They hovered silently, then split, sending a pulse that disabled several external energy shields. Shields down, northern perimeter, Myra shouted. Warning bells echoed across the colony. Kian moved with precision of a seasoned commander. Drones deploy, pattern Delta 9. Civilian zones priority 1. The new enemy moved with uncanny coordination, almost as if they anticipated every defensive move. These weren't Krillians. These were something else. Something far more adaptive. Through hours of night, the assault intensified. The attackers used terrain to advantage, striking from unexpected angles, retreating before retaliation. And Myra noticed something else. The enemy never attacked the children directly, almost as if they recognized some hidden code in their aggression. By midnight, Myra and Kian had forced the shadow ships to retreat temporarily, but the northern ridge now shimmered with residual energy of their technology. Kian stood beside her, gaze fixed on horizon. Victory isn't just about defeating one enemy. It's about preparing for the next. The universe has a way of testing those who survive. Myra nodded slowly, feeling weight of his words. She looked down at Nico, sleeping fitfully in a secure dome. His innocence was a fragile light in a galaxy full of shadows. She promised herself silently she would protect it at all costs. Above them, stars twinkled coldly, indifferent. Yet somehow the tiny glimmers of hope from Agasa 9 seemed to push back against that darkness. Kian's silhouette, steadfast and unyielding, became a symbol not of power alone, but of purpose. And Myra realized something profound. Humanity didn't just survive because of technology, tactics, or sheer numbers. They survived because of those willing to stand when the shadows fell, refusing to yield, refusing to break. The shadows had come. They had tested the colony. But humanity would endure. And the next time, they would not only survive, they would strike back.